Every day without a job offer isn't just another day on the calendar. It's another day of questioning your worth, second guessing your decisions, and wondering if you'll ever break through. I'm Holly Peak, founder and executive career strategist at Ascend Pro Solutions, someone who's been on both sides of the table as a candidate and as a recruitment leader and hiring manager. Today, I'm joined by Aaron Mitchell to pull back the curtain on something not enough people are talking about: the mental and emotional toll of extended job searches. We're not here to sugarcoat it. We're here to name it, navigate it, and give you real strategies to protect your resilience while you pursue the role you deserve. Let's get started.
Good morning,
Good morning, man.
Holly. Thanks for that intro and thanks for bringing us into this conversation. I think it's a super important conversation, especially right now. For those that don't know, my name is Aaron Craig Mitchell. I'm the founder and CEO of Acme, right here. And I focus on executive and career coaching. And Holly and I were catching up a couple weeks ago, talking about what we're seeing and how we're navigating our own challenges in this very challenging environment. And he thought it would be a good idea for us to talk about the hidden cost of extended job searches, what's happening from the perspective of people's mental health as they navigate what is probably some of the hardest fact let's just say set of circumstances we've seen in the job market in quite some time. Now, I want to note that both Holly and I are career coaches, former recruiters, but we are not mental health professionals.
Yeah.
And so, if you are in distress, we urge you to seek professional mental health support because what we want to provide today will help you get to where you need to be. But if you are experiencing any of the things that we're talking about today, please, please, please seek a professional's help because we want to make sure that you are well and that you're capable of staying in this fight with us.
Yeah. So we'll
So,
have some resources for you too at the end, right, Aaron?
absolutely, yeah, we'll definitely share some resources, some books, articles, things that we leverage in our own coaching practices. So, like I said, we're career coaches, and our focus today is really to explain the data behind the struggle. So the things that we're seeing, both in articles, in data sets that we're seeing, data from our own client discussions. We want to talk about the mental health reality, like what's really happening to folks on a day-to-day basis, regardless of your level, regardless of your geography. Like there are things that are happening to folks. We want to share ways that you can reclaim your narrative and then provide tips on how to build resilience without burnout because we want y'all to make it to the other side of this thing because so much of this journey has to do with what's going on up here. So, Holly, what can you add to that?
You laid a great foundation, man. I think really our goal today is to make this all relatable and practical. We want you to walk away with more than you came in with. So by the end of this hour, we want you to feel seen, supported, and connected. Um, Please, by all means, this should be interactive. So if you have any questions, we'll try our best to get to them immediately. We may not be able to, but we want to hear from you as well. Real quick, I would like just to do a quick pulse check from 1 to 5. How's everybody feeling about the job market right now? Um, Even if you're not in the job market, maybe you're a recruiter or a hiring manager on the call. What are you seeing? Are you seeing the levels of frustrations that we're talking about so far? I would love for you to put a anything from a 1 through a 5 in the chat right now.
And we probably have a little bit of a lag on when those will come through. So we'll continue to monitor the chat as we go through. But one being this sucks. 5 being, I've got this. Keep it simple, right? Right.
Keep it simple, right? All right. Well, as we continue, we'll continue to monitor the comments, and I have a feeling that we're going to see a lot of ones and twos. So,
Yeah. All right. So, let me ask you this, Holly. Why don't we talk a little bit about the data that's behind the struggle?
yeah,
What and specifically, like, what made this conversation so urgent for you at this
yeah.
particular moment?
The data is what made this urgent, right? The data is what pushed this topic from being uh, concerning to critical. So, honestly, when you factor the data with the timing of the conversation, that makes this even more urgent. For those of you that don't know, there is a such thing as it's called SAD, seasonal affective disorder, right?
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it's the holiday blues. We all know that the holiday can amplify feelings of isolation and inadequacy, even if you're employed. Now, if you layer that on with, an extended job search, now you're dealing with compounding mental health issues that a lot of people are going through and suffering through silence. The reason why this is so urgent for me is because we hear all the talking heads talking about unemployment not being so bad. As of August, it was 4.3%, which on its face really is not bad, right?
Mm.
I wish we had more urgent data, by the way, or more current data, by the way. But unfortunately, with the government shutdown, August is the best we got for now.
Right.
But even at 4.3, we see it as doable, right? Workable. Now, the long term unemployment is what really tells the story. Right now, 25% of all unemployed people have been unemployed for 6 months or more. That's the highest we've seen since the pandemic. What's worse is when you take it away from statistics and look at this as real people. This is 1.9 Americans that are longer than 6 months. And of
What
course, we know that for
1.9
marginalized,
million Americans?
1.9 million Americans.
Wow.
And of course, you and I know that for marginalized communities, that number can triple. And those gaps that over the last few years we saw starting to, you know, improve,
Mm-hmm.
well, now they're widening. So the data also doesn't show underemployment. Those mid to senior level professionals who now have to take part-time jobs or contract work just to survive.
Right.
There are also people who have just stepped out of the market completely because it feels hopeless. And so when I'm working with clients who are talented, high achievers, and I hear from them that they feel like they aren't enough or they aren't good enough, I know something is wrong.
Right.
So that's why we're here. We are here because when 1.9 million Americans are suffering in silence, somebody has to step up and break the silence.
And look, I think you're talking about, like, sort of slicing this data in different ways. I would imagine that this is going to be different depending on level, right? Like, there's people that,
Mhm.
depending on your level, you're more impacted, probably dealing with more unemployment. It's probably even industry specific. Like, we've seen the layoffs that have been happening in the entertainment industry specifically. I think
Yeah.
that's something we're adjacent to. And so all these things become even more real. And I think, to your point, like, if you're in an industry that's faced significant layoffs, if you're at a level where you've been more impacted by layoffs, that makes the job market even more competitive, which makes all of these mental health factors that you mentioned, they exacerbate those factors for people that are in those groups.
Yeah, man.
So the data in aggregate tells a story, but the data, when you slice it, I think tells an even more dire sort of situation.
Yeah. I like to take it away from percentages. And that's why I said 1.9 million people, because a 25% statistic really doesn't show the real consequences behind these numbers, right?
Right.
I'm curious for you, you're somebody who's been doing this a while and has seen a lot. Have you seen any difference between a professional at the 3 month mark as opposed to the professional at the 6 month or beyond mark?
Absolutely. So I think somebody at the 3 month mark is probably just starting to feel that urgency, right? Like
Yeah.
I've been at this, I knew it was going to take a little while. I'm getting a little nervous, but I'm still hopeful, right? I think the person at that 6 month mark, when I'm talking to people who are sort of 6 months or more, right? Like I've even spoken to folks that have been out of the market for a number of years, right? Like
Wow.
are re-entering the market after maybe living abroad and being the trailing spouse,
Yeah.
or um, took time away from work to care for a family member, right? It's even harder
Yeah.
because they start to believe that they are unemployable.
Yep.
And like, here's the thing, right? Like this is a broad statement, but I don't think anybody is unemployable.
Hmm.
I've seen
Say
so
more
many
about that.
resumes. Well, you know how you get these people who are like, look, if I have too many jobs, right? Like if I have too many sort of 18-month jobs on my resume, nobody's going to want to hire me,
Hmm.
right? Or if I have too long of a gap, nobody's going to want to hire me. I know you've been in the game for a while on the recruitment side. I have hired more people like that than I can remember,
Yeah.
right? Like that person, the person who has a new job every 18 months keeps getting new jobs
For a
every
reason.
18 months,
Yeah.
right? And nobody looks at that like you hit the limit. But people on the who are living that experience start to believe that narrative. Where it came
Yeah.
from, I don't know. What it's based on, it's not based on data. It's based on some story they've told themselves.
Yeah.
But to your point, like the difference between those people that are at 3 months more hopeful, the people at 6 months, despair starts to kick in, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I think what happens is people start to fill their head with the story they want to believe.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like they keep thinking, you know what? The no's that I'm getting, that's telling me something about me.
Hmm.
It's not telling me something about the job market,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It becomes personal.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, so I've seen it play out. Um, so I have a client currently. We'll call her Sarah, right? That's not her name. So um, Sarah has been a director for the last 10 years. When she came to me, on paper, looks great, flawless resume, strong LinkedIn presence. And as we started to talk, she mentioned that she hadn't been on LinkedIn in the last 3 weeks or any form of social media, which normally I advocate for, right? Stepping back from social media is usually a good thing. But as we dug deeper and I asked her more questions, I found out that she had actually started to withdraw even from friends and mentors that would text her and check in, right? And when I asked her why, she said that over the last 7 months, she's realized she started to question who she was if she wasn't a director.
Mm,
And she came from being the person that people always reached out to for advice to now, who am I? I think the most alarming part of this was how Sarah spent her days. She would job search for the first, as soon as she wakes up in the morning, she's filling out applications on LinkedIn. She's then reaching out for, coffee chats and trying to make network calls happen and things like that. And then for the remainder of the day, she's just sitting around twiddling her fingers, wondering why isn't somebody calling me back?
yeah.
So that's what predicated the withdrawal from LinkedIn because she felt like she was just digging herself deeper in a hole. What we had to do was reinforce her sense of self-worth first, right?
Mhm.
A lot of times when clients are redoing their resume or we're helping them redo their resume, I find value in letting them explain the achievements outside of the metric, right?
Yep. Yep.
So instead of simply how you improved efficiency or how you generated revenue or increased renewals, tell me the story. Talk me through it. Tell me about, what you were facing, what you were up against, how you overcame those hurdles. And as they start to kind of relive those situations and those scenarios, they become reminded of the value that they bring. Not only that, but I want to know, what are you doing outside of your job search? What's
Mhm.
bringing you joy? And I know we'll talk about that more later.
Yeah. No, and I know we're going to spend a little while talking about the power of storytelling.
Yeah.
But to your
Yeah.
point, right? Like, and look, I think we haven't exploited that human superpower enough.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about like the power it plays in the sort of mental health journey. But similar to you, like that is such an important part of how I coach folks. It's like we're going to spend some time crafting your peak experiences. We're going to
Yeah.
talk about like that thing that you did, because when you can hold on to that in these processes, like that becomes your truth,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I think that there's also, and you mentioned this to me, like the data, right?
Yeah.
There's a reason that sharing this data is important, because it helps people understand that this is systemic, not
Hmm.
personal, right? Like this is
Yeah.
something that's happening out in the world. These are trends that are important to understand. It's not a you thing. So
Yeah.
if you can avoid taking it personal, then you can avoid getting caught up in that narrative that keeps you twiddling your thumbs and like beating yourself up, because what's the point if that's not going to help you win?
Yeah. That's what the long-term search does. It doesn't just challenge your career. It starts to wear down your sense of self-worth. I'm curious for you, if you care to share and be this vulnerable. If not, I'll just go ahead and speak for myself. How do you recognize those symptoms of exhaustion, those symptoms of burnout, especially as we're trying to coach people through it? How do you, number one, recognize it, and then how do you combat it?
um well, let me tell you how I combat it, because I
Yeah.
think that that'll give you a sense for, I don't give myself a chance to like fall into the trap as much as I can, right?
Yes.
So I've got a therapist. We meet once a week, Wednesday. So my hump day is therapy. And what I like to tell people is like, and this is not true. Like my therapist is very objective, but my therapist often tells me how special I am,
Hmm.
right? Like having someone to tell you how special you are, right? Like having people around that tell you
Yeah.
what value you bring. So
Yeah.
like not only with my therapist, but with my wife and kids. My kids love to tell me how good a cook I am, right? Like,
Nice.
and I think they're manipulative, so they know how to get their way. But they definitely like, ooh, dad, you make the best eggs. Can you make some
Mhm.
eggs this morning? Right?
Yeah.
Like having a steady stream of positive affirmation is the antidote. And in fact, they say you need five positive affirmations for every negative experience.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so for me, it's really about keeping the quantity of positive affirmations so high that the negativity doesn't have a chance to take root.
I love that.
And so I know when I'm off, when I just haven't gotten my fill of positive affirmations, because I know the math, I know the science, I know what my brain will do if it
Yeah.
doesn't have these reminders. So I try to prevent that from happening. And when I can't, I look for it. Does that make sense?
It does. I like that. I like that a lot. Uh, Coincidentally, my therapy day is Wednesday too. Nice.
Oh, really? Hmm.
Yeah, man. For me,
What's
it's a
the
little
difference?
different. Wait, I didn't hear you. What'd you say?
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, for me, it's a little different. So we've talked about this before, how we're different in that I'm an introvert, right? I tend not to present like it, but I am very much a person who who thrives with the more me time I get, right? So thankfully, I have a wife and kids who have kind of learned to recognize, oh, dad needs some me time. He's a little grumpy, you know. What the difference for me is there's a difference between being alone and feeling lonely. And so I know, and I get the little spidey senses tingling when in my isolation, I start to feel lonely. That's rare. And so I know that something is off, right? When I am alone, usually I'm happy, I'm getting recharged, I'm doing my thing, right? But when I start to like feel isolated in my isolation, if that makes sense, that usually sends up a flag that something is off. And for me, similar to you, it's about connection, right? I
Mhm.
need to reconnect with the people that mean the most to me. I need to do more of the things that mean the most to me, like this, finding ways to be of service, finding ways to, give back to the community. Those are the things that can refill my cup when I'm feeling depleted. So,
Yeah. And look, I think because I want to spend a little bit more time on this reality, because I think it looks different for different people, right?
absolutely.
You
Yeah.
know, when I think back to, really, really early on, my wife and I moved to New York. I had just graduated business school, got a new job in the city. She had been with the same employer since we graduated from undergrad for like 7 years. And she had to leave that company to go move to New York. And, this is before my career coaching days. So I didn't exactly recognize what was happening. So we're in New York City, which for us was sort of like a dream situation. We're in our late 20s. New York City is New York City. And she's miserable.
Mm.
Like, she's miserable. Like, the number one, there was like anxiety because of the fact that she had to try to figure out how to get a job. And for her, it was like, if it doesn't happen within 60 days, then she's a failure. Right.
Wow.
There was this doubt that sort of crept in because she had been a high performer at this one company since graduating college. Was she good enough to be that same type of employee somewhere else? Like, things that didn't make a whole lot of sense, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Then, like, there was almost this sort of self-imposed isolation. My wife, like you, is an introvert.
Mm.
And it'd be like, hey, why don't you go hang out with so-and-so or do this and do that? It's like, no, I can't do that because I'm not employed. So I'm just going to be here focusing on getting that done.
Wow.
But that focus wasn't really focused. That focus was more just like a punishment almost, right?
Yeah.
And then just sort of like, I think hers was less like I am my title and more like my wife is the daughter of Nigerian immigrants, right? Like, if I am not working,
Mm.
what am I, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's sort of like, I always joke, like, her growing up, she had maybe 5 career options: doctor, lawyer, engineer, pharmacist, or failure, right? Like,
Mm.
those are the only 5 options. There was no coloring outside of those lines.
Yeah.
And to add to that, it's like, and if not working, then you are not valuable. At least that's the
Mm.
sort of thing that had been internalized.
Wow.
Right. And so, like, I think we all come into this with different baggage, with
Yeah.
different sort of things that we wear, and different ways that we expect our community to be involved in that journey. Right. Like, some of us think I can only connect with my community when I have a win.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, like, thinking about my own journey as an entrepreneur, which is like the job search on steroids.
Oh
Is
man.
is it
Speak on
not?
it. Oh
Like,
man.
every day is a potential job or a loss, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah.
And the rejection, like somebody saying, you know what, you're too expensive,
Yep.
or we went with we went another direction, or
Yeah, man.
and it's every day,
Yeah.
like every other day, every week,
Yeah.
and it's like all these things that are sort of fighting to wear you down.
Yeah.
One big solution, to your point before, is like, let me connect with people who are going through this.
Yeah.
And there's been so many times where I'm like, I don't want to reach out because I don't want them to think I'm a loser.
Yeah.
I don't want them to think that, like, I don't know what I'm talking about. So I'm just going to keep it to myself until I have a win to show. And that's what happens to a lot of people in this job search, where it's like, I'm not going to talk to anybody, even though I probably need help, telling my story in this interview. I
Yeah.
probably need help thinking about how to tap into my network. I probably need help XYZ. But you know what? I'll call on Holly when I can tell him I got the job.
Right. Right. Yeah. I hear you taking us very, very, very skillfully into storytelling, professional storytelling, and how important it is, right? And professional storytelling is where the mental health battle is either won or lost. Because so often when we're in job searches, how we think about ourselves comes across clearly in every interview, in every networking conversation. And if we allow it, it'll rewire our brain to thinking that we are failures or that we are inadequate. And when you've been unemployed for months, your internal narrative starts to shift. You start, instead of thinking, I'm in between opportunities, something's coming, you start thinking, like you said, what's wrong with me? What
Mm-hmm.
value do I have to bring? You start explaining gaps defensively instead of positioning them as decisive, intentional choices. So you're no longer selling yourself. Now you're trying to just justify who you are, right?
Say more. Justify who you are.
So the justification comes from an insecurity. And too often I'll just speak for me, too often I put a whole lot of weight on my paycheck and my job title.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I transitioned from leading recruitment at Netflix to start a Synpro, man, I faced, and this was just a few months ago, I faced a huge identity crisis because for over a decade, I was that dude. I was the person who recruited for top tier companies. I was the person who led teams who improved efficiencies time and time. Like our metrics were stellar. I was the guy who had the insider access that everybody wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And then on a dime, I'm now a founder without a team. I have no proven track record in coaching. And I have a wife and three small children that are depending on me.
Mm-hmm.
I know for a fact, in some of my earlier conversations with colleagues, I shrunk. And I heard myself saying things like, well, I'm just starting out and I'm trying to figure it out. Or, you know, uh, yeah, I haven't really thought about that yet. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. Instead of owning my transition, like the strategic decision to strike out on my own that it was, the imposter syndrome was suffocating me. And I started thinking, well, who am I to coach executives when I'm questioning my own professional identity?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, man.
What story were you telling yourself at that point? Like what was the actual narrative that was running in your mind?
The prevailing thought was, how dare you leave this comfortable job that people are begging to find themselves in? The perpetual golden handcuffs. All you had to do was run out the clock. You'd have been fine. But that's just not who I am. And so once I was able to overcome that negative self-talk, I had to reframe my story by using the exact principles I now teach. So instead of apologizing for being new, I set strategic context. If you were to ask me now, I'd say, well, after a decade inside talent acquisition at major tech and entertainment companies, I recognize a critical gap where introverted high performers like myself were being overlooked for leadership roles despite their results. So I founded Ascend Solutions with the insider knowledge to help overcome those gaps. Once I stopped talking about my transition as, something I was trying to run away from and owned it as a strategic pivot, everything shifted. That's what works for me. And that's
So
what I teach now to my clients.
so let me ask a controversial question.
Yeah, man.
Is this reclaiming your narrative? Is this lying to yourself?
It can never be lying because here's the thing. Authenticity is a superpower. And once you give that up, you lose all credibility. So I like to tell my clients, when confidence is low, remember, confidence isn't just a feeling, it's a practice.
Mm-hmm.
You practice the language of progress, not perfection. Instead of saying, I've been unemployed for 7 months, you say, you know what? I've been strategic about my next role, the cultural fit, the leadership I'm going to work under. And here's what I'm learning through the process. I'm setting clearer boundaries for myself around work-life integration. I'm learning stronger communication skills through the job search itself. And I have a sharper understanding of what I need to thrive. It should never be lying. It should never be performative. If anything, it's allowing yourself to reframe the narrative. And instead of looking at the negative in the situation, extracting the positive. Also, for my introverts that may be listening, You do not need to network like an extrovert to be successful. It's quality over quantity. And this goes into that authenticity and not lying to yourself or to others.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of exhausting yourself by going to, a networking happy hour where you're going to need to recover for the next 3 days, like I would, a thoughtful, well considered LinkedIn comment or a post will build that same level of genuine connection with those who you seek to build community with. And it still protects who you are. So,
Let's stay on this one because
yeah,
I use different language,
yeah,
even though I think we arrive in the same place.
yeah.
Um, I don't use this one, but what are your thoughts on fake it till you make it?
I don't. I don't. I don't. Don't fake it until you make it because you won't make it. There's a difference between, like Glorilla say, hyping yourself up. Sometimes you gotta hype. I gotta hype me up, right? Sometimes you have to be your biggest cheerleader, but at no point should you take credit for things that you haven't actually accomplished,
Right.
or position yourself to be a subject matter on things that you may just have a passing knowledge of. That does more damage than help. And
Mm-hmm.
right now, I think authenticity, connection are what's needed more than posturing and putting on airs. You mentioned that you had other techniques that you use for your clients. What are some of those other techniques that you use to help them thrive in this climate?
So a lot of times, right, like I'll hear a client tell me some of the things that we talked about, right, which is like, I've been at this for 7 months. I'm striking out.
Yeah,
I must not be good enough, right? My network is not strong.
yeah,
And like clearly, if I were as good as I want to be, I would have landed something by now, right?
yeah, yeah,
And so what I'll kind of help them reflect on is part of what you talked about with the data, right? Like if this is happening to X number of people, do you really think this thing is you? Or are there some aspects of this that are sort of in the air?
yeah,
And they're like, yeah, okay, maybe I don't exactly suck. Maybe it's not completely me, right?
yeah,
So we'll go through a couple of iterations of this. And then I'll be like, so everything you said initially is at least it may be untrue, but at the very least, it's inaccurate, right?
mm,
It's a story. It's a story you've
mm,
told yourself. If you can tell yourself that story, why not pick a story where you actually win,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Pick the story where you win. And
yeah,
sometimes I'll even go as far as to say, like, look, this is all a delusion. If I want to get all matrix on people, like we're all living in a delusion. Why not pick
yeah.
the delusion
That
like
serves you.
that works for you?
Yeah, I like that.
And I say I use different words to get to the same thing. At no point am I telling people to not be their most authentic thing, right? Like
Right.
I think authenticity. I posted about this at one point. I said authenticity is like currency.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's useful, spin, spin, spin,
Yeah.
but you can't spend it everywhere. And so when you're walking into these interview situations and you're doing it with authenticity, there's going to be some people who reject you based on who you are. That's fine. Because if they reject you in the interview process for being who you are, it was going to be really hard to thrive in that place. So don't change who that is, but absolutely refine that person based on the context, right? Like I think Trevor Noah had talked about like authenticity, like being him listening to music. He's like, when I'm by myself, I'll listen to my music loudly. When I'm in public, if I do that, that makes me a jerk. That's not authenticity. That's like a lack of self awareness. That's a lack of care and concern for others. So I can still listen to my music. I can still be true to myself with my earpods. And that same thing works in an interview process where you can be an authentic version of yourself You don't have to be the context inappropriate version of yourself. And if you learn how to tell your story and you learn how to tell yourself stories about the context that's happening, then you can endure what for a lot of people is the unendurable, like this constant rejection, this constant sort of hunting without being successful. It takes its toll. But if you can convince yourself, okay, I'm just one more conversation away from the place that embraces me for the amazing individual that I am, that's a whole different sort of way of looking at it that makes every single interaction feel productive as opposed to self-defeating. Does that make sense? You're muted. Hold up. Let me unmute.
There, oh, that's you. Okay.
Right.
I remember seeing I don't know if it was a post or a meme, but it was basically someone kind of in a mine and they were like digging through a wall, digging through a wall. And in one picture, the wall looked endless, right? And then in the next picture, they were digging in the wall, but just like maybe
Mm-hmm.
a few inches more, it was all the, jewels and diamonds and all the things that they were digging for. And the moral or the theme or the point of it was just when you're about to give up, you never know how close you are to success, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think avoiding that burnout, especially at a time right now, is critical. How do you have the mental fortitude? What do you do to stay? It's almost like working out, right? Or it's better, I guess, better like a marathon, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you run a marathon the same way you would a race, you're gonna fall out. I'll give you a quick story. I see Jade is on here. Shout out to Jade. So Jade helps run an organization called the Black Men's Wellness Event every year in LA, right? And my son and I went this year, and it's a 5K race, but they also do all kinds of health screenings and things like that to bring the Black male community closer and more, make them more aware of their healthcare, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we started the 5K, and my son, who's 7, is like, Dad, let's run it. I'll be 45 in a couple weeks. I'm not running a 5K, right? But he's like, Dad, let's run it. I was like, all right, cool. Let's run it. I know we're not gonna make it through the 5K, but let's let the man do what he wants, right? So they start the race. We head out. Nice little pace, nice little pace. Next thing you know, he takes off. And I'm like, all right, buddy, you might want to slow down. He's like, no, Dad, I got it. He takes off. I'm maintaining my little pace. Eventually, I catch up to him and he's spent. And we maybe made it a fourth of the 5K. And for the remainder of the time, we walked. And before we crossed the finish line, in fact, I had to put him on my back because he had exerted all that energy on the front end. And the job search is just like that.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be very intentional and very deliberate with how you spend your energy so that you don't burn out, because this is a marathon. What are some of the ways you coach your clients on avoiding burnout?
Yeah. First and foremost, like I've experienced that mental, emotional burnout a couple times in my career.
Mm-hmm.
So anything that I'm offering up is also stuff that I'm actively applying because
Yeah.
like I know how easy it is to get to like that point and not even
Yeah.
see that you're there, right? Like have other people be like, "Are you okay?" And be like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine." And then next thing you know, you're crashed out, right?
Yeah.
So the first thing I think kind of goes to what we were talking about with storytelling, which is really a version of cognitive reframing, right? It's
Yeah.
part
That's
of
good.
the ability to um, understand the larger context and accept that the thing that you're experiencing is not defeat,
Yeah.
but it's additional data.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example, right? I just mentioned like the experiences we have as entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the number of times I've had conversations with people where they're like, if I get feedback about being too expensive, right?
Mm-hmm.
I could either adjust my prices or find clients who have a willingness to pay for the expertise and experience that I bring.
Right.
Now, depending on how much data I'm getting and where that data is coming from, that's going to determine how I spend that next step, as opposed to, man, I'm just not good at this. Let me pack it up and shut it down. Another set of tools that I offer up to people are really around emotional regulation. So things like mindfulness, whether that's breathing, meditation, noting like, hey, this is how I'm feeling, what preceded that feeling,
Yeah.
how am I feeling, and what actions did I take because of the feeling, right? Like really being clear and mindful about those things. Having structured breaks, like I take walks. I live in a fairly walkable area in LA, and I take walks just about every day. When I unless my calendar is just so crazy that I can't get a walk in, I'm taking a 10, 15, 20-minute walk around the neighborhood.
Yeah, man.
I know people look at me like, why is this dude always walking around? Like, I'm probably one of those people in my neighborhood, but that's my routine. Exercise, right? I've been doing this thing recently where I try to do 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, and 100 squats a day, unweighted, right? Part of that is because like I had pretty serious back issues, and like building my core strength has just been like necessary. But also it's like, oh, if I knock these out, like my blood is flowing, I'm thinking more clearly, and I've checked something off the box that if I can do this every day, it gives me a sense of accomplishment, and that creates emotional regulation. And then like even things like journaling, like writing down why you're feeling, even if it's just a paragraph, right? Like, here's how I'm feeling today. One thing that I do a lot is like when I'm feeling like things are starting to spin, I'll do like a gratitude journal. Like, what am I grateful for?
Yeah.
I'm grateful for that. And it immediately changes my perspective, because it's like, wait a minute, I got a whole lot of things to be grateful for. Yes, there's some things that suck,
Sure.
but if these were like a scale, the things that I'm grateful for significantly outweigh the things that I'm not, right?
Yeah, that's powerful.
I also tell people like, look, it's important to create boundaries, right? So like, if you know that this job search is sucking you dry, it's like, give yourself a few hours of dedicated time for this job search, and then give yourself time for other things so that you have contrast within your day, but also so that you can time box this thing. So you can, okay, I'm going to send out X number of emails, or I'm going to send out Y number of messages, or I'm going to apply to this many number of jobs, or I'm going to do research on this, or I'm going to do interview preparation, right? With my clients, obviously, I do a coaching program. So I'm taking people through 12 sessions, and each session is focused on a particular aspect of the job search. But even if I'm just advising people on a one-off basis, it's always like, look, the more you can give yourself specific blocks of time to do things, you will thank yourself, because, as an entrepreneur, we talked about this thing, right? Like there's a huge difference between working and having a set of expectations, and then kind of being left to your own devices. We're not really raised to be left to our own devices. Remember, even recess was a fixed amount of time.
Structured,
right? Like, so we thrive in that structure. Like even when we were at Netflix, it was like, lunchtime is at this time. That's when all the meals are going to be bought to, the cafeteria.
You got from now to eat. If you don't eat between then, you're on your own.
Right. You're left to whatever's in the refrigerator, because you're probably not leaving the office for lunch. But that structure is something that we are used to, that we need to build into our job search process or our entrepreneurial processes. Otherwise, all this sort of negativity starts to spiral. But I'll pause there, because I got a lot more, but I want to make sure.
No, real quick, man. I love especially the setting boundaries piece, because I've seen that just recently be very transformative for a client I just started working with. It's amazing how that shift can really kick in. When we started working together, of course, I'm asking how you spend your days, and he shared with me that he lies awake until 2 a.m. playing over, the companies that he applied to that day, the people he reached out to that maybe didn't have time in the day to respond. So now he's internalizing that, just to finally fall asleep and then sleep in and then start the process the next day, right? So now you're waking up at 10 a.m. You've had all that doubt. You didn't really get the quality of sleep that you needed. So when we started working together, I said, okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set some office hours, right?
Mm.
We're going to structure your search from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Monday through Friday, 4 hours focused. At 1 p.m., you are off the clock. That means no more LinkedIn doom scrolling, no more, applicant portals, no more networking requests. You're done for the day. Now you have to do something that is self-serving, like you said, that will pour back into you. In the last 2 weeks, man, I've seen a significant improvement. I've seen his anxiety lessen and change. I've seen him reconnect with friends that he had kind of distanced himself from. Like you, he started working out again. And even a recent interview performance was much better. He came into it much more confident because instead of him being desperate and
Mhm.
depleted, he showed up rested and relaxed, and he was able to bring himself, the self that he holds in high esteem, he was able to bring that into the room. And you see that change just by doing those few things, being mindful of your energy, setting boundaries. I love that. One other thing that you mentioned that I want to talk about as well is you mentioned, I call them joy anchors, right? You mentioned finding moments for yourself to just make you happy. And it
Mhm.
can be, some people, I think you like to cook, exercise. I like to read fiction, play video games. I too like to walk. The difference for me, though, I'll tell you, when I drop the kids off in the morning, I will come back home and there's a bike path near us, and I'll hit that bike path, but I won't put on headphones, right? So no music, no
Mm.
podcasts, nothing. I just want to walk. I want to breathe the fresh air, and I want to hear the sounds of just outside. I just want to take in the birds and, the guy that got upset and honked the horn a block over or whatever it is. I just want to be present in that moment,
Mhm.
because far too often we take ourselves out and we start thinking about, oh man, this bill is due, or this client didn't respond, or I wonder how he did on his interview last week, or all of these things start running through your head. Oh, the kids have a recital on Friday. All of these things, instead of just being where you need to be for you.
Right.
And that's very, very important. We have to use these joy anchors because they remind us that we're more than our job search. You are more than whether or not a recruiter responds to you. You got to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, 100%. And I want to invite folks that are listening to either drop ideas around what has worked for y'all in terms of avoiding burnout, building your resilience. So drop some ideas, like what are some techniques or some interventions that have worked for you, or anything that you heard that resonates as something
Yeah.
that you might want to try. Because I've got, for maybe about a month and a half, I was posting different techniques on
Mhm.
LinkedIn for this very particular thing. So I have like hundreds of these techniques, because I think everybody responds to things differently. Like the thing you
Yeah.
were talking about, the sort of walking meditation, right? Um, I I do that every now and then I'm like, I want to use this to multitask because I really don't have time to listen to these audibles. So I'm gonna walk and listen to an audible versus like taking in the sounds of manufactured nature, because I
Yeah.
live, my area is very urban. There's no birds chirping. It's all
Got you.
car horns and obscenities. But
Got you.
but one thing I we mentioned earlier that's a very sort of important uh, resilience building activity
Mhm.
is community.
Yeah, man.
Um, and introvert or extrovert, right? Like we all need those human connections. You
Oh
mentioned
yeah.
the difference between being alone and being lonely.
Yeah.
Or like being alone for an introvert is amazing.
It's
It's how you
peace.
recharge.
Yeah, man.
It is everything.
Yeah.
And listen, I told you I'm married to an introvert, and she is
You
an
get it.
extreme introvert. And it's like my gift to her on the weekends is like taking the kids out the house
Yes, sir.
and
Yep.
just like going on long drives and things so that she has her alone time.
Yep.
But once you cross into that loneliness, there's a need for that human connection.
Yeah.
um, and we all like we are a social species, right? Like we
Yeah.
need those connections. Like that's where we
Yeah.
get our fuel, that's where we get our energy, that's where we get our validation.
Yeah.
And so whatever you're doing, make some form of community connection a part of it, whether it is like I've heard even people like connecting into these job circles where there are like a collection of people who are seeking jobs,
Yeah.
so they can just come together and hear like, oh my gosh, all these challenges that I'm facing are normal here. Like
Yep.
everybody's facing this stuff. And we get real excited when somebody wins. Like when we see one of our fellow, community members finally get that job, like there's sort of a dopamine hit that we get from that. And so
Yeah.
like find that local job search community, or find the onward job search community, or find the community of gardeners, or the community of people who like to do watercolors, or the video game community, right? Like whatever it is, like community should absolutely be a part of how you're building that resilience.
Yeah. And we touched on it a little bit, but structure, right? I've found that a lot of times when you've been out of work for an extended period of time, you start to break your habits, right? Right now, if you have somewhere to be, you're going to make sure you're rested. You're going to make sure you wake up early in the morning, you shower, you eat breakfast, you do whatever, you get your cup of coffee, whatever it is you need to start your day. But too often I've found that once an extended job search really takes hold mentally, you start to break those habits. And so what I would encourage to those who are listening, maintain your routine. If when you were working, you got up at 6:30 in the morning, get up at 6:30 now. If you made sure that you were in the bed by 10, take yourself to bed by 10. Do not wake up and immediately start job searching. No, do some of those things that Aaron just talked about to find your community or take care of your own mental and physical needs. But maintain your routine, because that routine is muscle memory, and it starts to create an energy, and energy starts to create reality. And
Mm-hmm.
so all of these things will help you along the way. It's not just mindless activity, it's productivity. It's reminding yourself of the ways that you are at your best. So just
Yeah.
want to add that to it as well.
And
What we
and
got
I,
oh, go ahead.
I was just going to add one thing that you made me think about. When I was probably maybe 6 months into this entrepreneurial journey, right? And I was grinding. I was grinding, grinding, grinding. Like plates were spinning on all fingers. And I connected with a friend of mine who's also a coach, and she told me, or she sent me this podcast she had done about the power of the pause.
Mm,
And it was essentially like, look, you've been running your whole life, right? You're a hard worker, you're an achiever, you're ambitious. What would happen if you just rested?
yeah, that's good.
And like when she asked me that question, like being vulnerable, like tears like started streaming down my face, because I'm like, I've never given myself the permission to rest. Like
Yeah.
that wasn't even a part of the equation, right? And so to your point about like, don't wake up and do the jobs, like don't like give yourself some structure,
Hmm.
structure in some rest, structure in some
Hmm.
breaks. Like if you're not someone who like is kind to yourself, this is absolutely the time to be kind to yourself,
Yeah,
right?
man.
And if that break is just sitting down and doing nothing,
Yeah, man.
right? Like or giving yourself some time to catch up on the doom scrolling, or watch your favorite show, or if you like some junk food reality TV, like give yourself an episode of Real Housewives, whatever it is, like
Yeah.
allow yourself the opportunity to rest, because everything else you do around that will be better for it.
Yeah. That's good. I know we are rounding third with our time. So as we wrap up, I just want to make sure that if you don't remember anything else from this conversation, I need you all to remember this. You're not broken, you're not worthless, and most importantly, you are not alone. So please take a moment. If you have any reflections from the comments, we love to hear them. We'd love to read them. If you have any questions, we'd love to take the next few minutes um, answering any questions. But also, this conversation kind of inspired me, man. So for the remainder of the year, in between the holidays, if anyone needs like practical, tactical solutions or just a safe space to vent, DM me on LinkedIn, or you can go to my website, ascendprosolutions.com. We will set up, I'll do office hours. So every Friday from 10 to 12, we'll block 30 minutes of just working sessions, free of charge, whatever you need. Like I said, even if you just need to yell for half an hour, I'll put you on mute and just allow like whatever you need. But I think it's important to make sure that people have space, people feel connection, and they have resources. Um, if you find yourself in a mental health crisis, uh, I need you to dial 988. That is the mental health crisis hotline. They're available 24/7. There are sites like BetterHelp, Psychology Today, the Thriving Center of Psychology. These are all resources that are available to you so that you don't feel like you're suffering in silence. And that's the point of today.
Yeah, and I extend and have always extended the sort of same, reach out to me on LinkedIn. If you've got my email address, reach out. Consider Holly and I a part of that community that
Yeah,
we're
man.
talking about being so critical, right? Like we are absolutely professionals that are out here doing this for a living, but we're also human beings that care about other human beings.
Yeah,
And so where we can be helpful, where we can be a sounding board, where we can just be a listening ear, like consider us a part of that community.
yeah,
Um, and look, again, Holly, like, thank you for the motivation to even do this type of session. When we originally connected, I was thinking about something a bit more, on the nose when it comes to the job search.
hmm hmm
And Holly was like, "Look, everybody's doing that.
yeah,
Let's talk about this thing, because we're not talking about this enough.
right,
And let's be clear, right? Like, I think it means something to hear, first of all, men speaking about mental health, and then Black men speaking about mental health, because we know that, as far as the data is concerned, we are not usually in these conversations,
right,
leading these conversations.
right.
And if we can model that we benefit from these conversations, everybody benefits
Yeah, man.
from that vulnerability, right?
Yep,
And if we can be open with sharing our challenges, everybody in our community, regardless of your identity, benefits from knowing that, like, okay, if it's okay for them, it's okay for me.
yep,
And you're not crazy. It's
yeah,
tough out there.
yeah,
We're here to tell you that it's real, and we're here to tell you that there's a way through it.
yeah, yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you, my brother. I appreciate you, man.
Thank
Thank you
you.
to everybody that joined.
Absolutely. And we will be making this video available. So if you know somebody who needs it, who didn't see
Yeah,
it, just make sure you follow us on LinkedIn, stay connected,
yeah,
and we will make this available so that, again, we can help anybody who needs it navigate this very, very challenging environment and get to the other side with some joy and some positivity. So thank you.
all right. Take care, everybody.
All right.